My name is Kim. Welcome to the Transparent Series, the Sister Talk, the Racial Divide. Today, on our guest panel, we have Josie, who is our editor-in-chief of She Prayed Ministries. We have Giovanna, who is our blogger for single moms. And we have Melissa, who is our missions leader. Welcome. This is just a light discussion about some things that we all need to talk about today. First question, in what ways, if anything, have you experienced a racial divide?
I guess I'll go first. Honestly, I can say from me moving from New Jersey to Virginia when I was in 8th grade, it was a culture shock for me. Being in New Jersey, it was all different. You know, we were very diverse in school, different cultures, different backgrounds. When I went to Virginia, it was either you were black or you were white. There was very little Hispanic or any other race. It was just basically either you were black or you were white. And for me, going to middle school and seeing that, it was just like, okay, this is different. So it was like I had to choose, am I black or am I white?
You had to make a choice.
And before I was just me, you know. I didn't see color. I didn't see any of that. So I was kind of forced. And then I found myself when I was with my black friends being, you're trying to be white. Or, you know, like the white people would never say you're too black. But like, you know, you kind of got that vibe of, okay, I have to kind of bring it down a little notch. And then just being teased all the time that I was a white girl stuck in a black girl's body. So those are the type of things I had to deal with growing up.
That racial divide.
Yes.
Given the current circumstances that occurred the past months, how have you or your family been affected by anything that's been going on? Josie?
So just the beginning of this week, I had to witness my husband literally break down in front of our family. In the years that me and my husband been together, I probably seen him break down probably 2, maybe 3 times at the most. And he's never wept like he did this past week in regards to, you know, all the racial, you know, stuff going on. And when he brought it to my attention how he felt, I really didn't think it was that deep because he's such a strong man, so he handles everything so well. I knew he was dealing with something, but I honestly didn't sense it until I literally saw him weep, and he clung to me and threw himself on top of me and just wept in front of our boys. So I took him upstairs and we just had like a heart-to-heart conversation, and he just explained to me how much it just hurt him just to see how much there's so much division still, and just all the racial things that he had to deal with just growing up, and it still exists and everything like that. So he just wept, and I just tried to support him the best that I could, because I mean, I see it, but I never really been through it personally myself.
You're
and
married
then
to an African-American man.
Yes. And then so to see my 6-year-old who is mixed come upstairs and say, "Mommy, what's wrong with Daddy?" And he heard some of our conversation, and his words broke me down. It was his words were, "Mommy or Daddy, why can't you just wear a mask to cover your skin? Why can't we just paint your skin color?" And hearing that from my 6-year-old, it was a wow for me. It broke me down. Like, I sobbed with my husband on our bed, and we explained to our son, like, you shouldn't have to wear a mask or have to feel like you need to paint your skin any color for anybody. God made you the way that he made you for a reason. He loves you just the way that you are, and you don't have to wear a mask or put up a front for anybody. So, you know, we had to explain those things to our 6-year-old, and that for me was, I think, what put me in a different place at that point.
So being married to an African American man and having biracial children, in your family, how do your kids deal with this whole situation now? You said that your son was like, why don't we just paint?
Yeah.
But how do you explain it to a 6-year-old or a 5-year-old
Yep.
of what's going on in the world right now?
Right. We try to not protect them fully from it, but to a certain extent. I don't want him hearing and seeing everything that's going on, but to a certain extent, they have to know what's going on, just to be prepared so that it doesn't catch them by surprise for if, God forbid, it ever happens to them. And another statement he made the other night was with the whole cops and the George Floyd going on. He said, I don't like cops. I don't like cops. They're bad. And then that was another explanation of, baby, not all cops are this way. They're not all bad. And that was just a whole another conversation that we had to have with our 6-year-old. Yeah. And I mean, we talked to our other kids about it. They kind of know a little bit more, obviously. But he was like all in the conversations and question. He's very observative. I want to know what's going on. Why this, why that? So, yeah.
How does it affect you with your families watching what's going on TV?
So it affects us tremendously. Just as Josie was saying too, we don't try to shelter them from what is happening. We try to be real and have real conversations about it. And the biggest thing is giving them a platform to speak about how they're feeling, what they're going through, letting them tell. Your home is always your safe haven for your children. And the same thing for my husband. It is his peace. So there is not going to be any other place that he's going to feel comfortable, or myself or my children are going to feel comfortable in talking about what they're seeing and what they're going through. You know, that's the place where you can react out in emotion. Because when you do that in public, or when you do that in social media, you can't take that back. So in your home, it's a safe place to be able to have those discussions and give them that platform. Because I think sometimes with parents, we make the mistake of not having the conversation in fear of maybe we don't know what to say, or also they don't understand. They do. They absolutely understand. In their own innocence, they understand, and we have that responsibility as parents to really explain that to them and how truly it can affect them, but letting them know they have a safe space to really have their emotions come out.
Now, Melissa, you're married to an African American man. And again, having that safe space, so important. The fact that your husband felt comfortable enough to even weep in front of you, that had to be the last straw, right? That he couldn't take it anymore. And that's what we feel as African American women. We feel that constantly. So every time they show us a picture or they show us someone being killed that looks like us, we go back to that could be my brother, that could be me. And if they're not going to stop, just because we say stop, then where does that leave us? So again, I say thank you for giving your husbands that safe space and teaching your kids. Because it's a safety issue now. And sometimes it doesn't matter what you do, you're going to get it. But we have to know that we are covered by Jesus' blood. We have to know that we are covered. And I think that's our saving grace. People that don't have Jesus, I don't know what they're doing.
Amen.
And I don't know how they're going to get through this.
Amen.
But we have Jesus, and we want to share that peace of God that surpasses all understanding. We want to share that with the people.
And I think you bring up another great point. It's prayer. I wrote this on my social media as well. I pray over my husband every single day before he leaves the door. And it's a different kind of prayer. Because my husband is black, my prayer is that no weapon formed against him shall prosper. Amen. Not because of the work he does, not because he's going somewhere, but it is because he is a black man, and unfortunately, he may be put in a position where he is either killed or where he is being put in jail for nothing. And my husband is a good man. He's a great man. And I hear that every time we have an episode like this that happens in this country so often. When I just heard George Floyd's daughter's mother speak about how good of a man he was and how great of a man he was, and that there's now film of his daughter saying, my daddy changed the world.
Yes.
Of his daughter. And, it's a...
But a cost.
Yes.
It cost him his life.
Yep.
For that. And if that had not been on video, how many others?
Yep.
How many others? That's good. Thank you. We're aware of the tragedies that have taken place in our nation, and how, as a woman of God or a woman of faith, do you compensate for those experiences and feelings that we have? And I think we touched on that a little bit, that it's truly God's grace and his mercy and his peace that just helps us. But how do you, as women of God, deal with that?
I can say, as an African American woman, this has definitely been one of the hardest weeks of my life. And honestly, I don't really know exactly why it's been so hard, because we see this all the time. We've seen many, many stories of this happening. But for some reason, it just hit so hard and different. And I find myself on social media scrolling and just seeing different things, and like just what the media shows, and just like you said, like when you see this happening to an African American man, like that could have been my dad, that could have been my cousin, that could have been my uncle, and it just breaks your heart. And the fact that we're still living in a world where you get judged by the color of your skin, and it's just heartbreaking that I'm African American and you're judging me because of my skin color, and you automatically see a threat.
Automatically.
And it breaks my heart that we live in a world like that, when there's so many, African American men, women, children that are the most loving and most caring and most hardworking people, but we automatically get targeted. So it's been hard. But as a woman of God, I can say what has gotten me through this week is definitely prayer. I know Melissa touched on that, praying and asking God for peace, and also relying on my sisters and my family to uplift. And I know I had to reach out to you, Kim. I just seeing so much on social media, and I just had a breakdown, and I just began to weep and cry. And at that moment, I was praying, but I was just praying, God, help me. I didn't have all the words to say, so I needed somebody to come along with me and encourage my spirit that was so low at that moment. And so definitely, as a Christian African American woman that's going through these and all the ups and downs and the emotions, is definitely relying on God for that strength and that peace to get through it.
The strength and the peace is going to be key. And keep in mind that for all of us, we're all women of color. People don't understand that we can't take this off. We don't have the luxury. At work, we don't have the luxury of going off when we want to go off. When we want to say what we want to say, we think twice over everything. If we get stopped by the police, we think twice. So imagine our black brothers and sisters, our brothers who are stopped by the police, or not even just that, in the workplace, or living while black.
Yes.
I had a situation, and living while black, the neighbor underneath me, she called the police on me and my son, because we were just living. And the police came. I invited him in. Don't ever do that without a warrant. He was a good cop. He came in, he looked around, he said, "You're not having a party?" I said, "No." "Why did she call the police?" This was before George Floyd died. And I said, "It's because I'm living here. She doesn't like it." He said, "Okay, ma'am, I'm sorry." He said, "I'm sorry." Good cop. I think back on that, how many times could that have played out so different? How many times? He could have came in, he could have done anything he wanted to do in the name of the law. And I didn't think that far. And I was like, okay, Lord, give me the insight. No, that's just common sense now. You don't have a warrant, you can't come in. So that taught me, and that was just 3 weeks ago, that taught me you can't trust anybody. And should we really feel that way? But as Christian women, we're taught, give everybody the benefit of the doubt, see the good. And it's hard for us not to want to give people the benefit of the doubt, but at the end of the day, we can't. Right. We don't have the luxury of giving you the benefit of the doubt. We really don't.
So I think that struggle too in being a Christian woman is checking our emotions. Like I said, we create that safe space in our home so we can do that. But once those emotions are out and you try to do that in public, you can't take that back. And the anger that I have felt over the last week,
yes,
and stopping that from manifesting into something very ugly, because that anger can turn into self-destruction. So definitely checking that before talking with anyone, before posting anything, because if we allow ourselves, our emotions to get the best of us, what we're trying to say isn't going to come across. And I remember Pastor last night spoke about if you focus on just the words and not the hurt, then you don't get the emotions or the understanding of what someone is truly going through. You get defensive instead. And we have to take that moment of pause. We live in a society today where I have my truth, you have your truth, but my truth is truer than yours. It's an actual quote. I'm so sorry, I don't know who said it. But we have to come to a place of conversation and understanding, and that's what we're expecting from all of our brothers and sisters of all different cultures, to understand what it is that you women go through, to understand what it is that my husband go through, to understand what it is that my biracial children go through every day. It's about putting yourself in those shoes. Everybody spoke about when he cried out for his mama. Every mama felt that.
Everyone knows what that feels like.
Exactly. So we have to, as Christian women, stay in our word, stay prayed up, and allow him to guide us in every single day, literally every single day, to guide us, especially in these heightened situations.
So in knowing that, what is our responsibility in the body of Christ during these chaotic times? What is our responsibility? Thanks, Jesse.
Oh, sorry, Jen.
For me, I think that honestly, it's knowing who we are in God, our identity in Christ. Because if we get caught up and wrapped up in all the social media, everything that's put out, and just everything that people are saying to or about us, if we don't know who we are in Christ, we can so quickly fall into the trap of just thinking that what they're saying is what's true, and it's not what they are saying about us. It's not, we shouldn't be focusing on all the chaos, even though it is hard. Sometimes we have to literally shut the social media down.
Absolutely.
Because for me this week, even though I'm not an African American woman, I myself broke down this week. It has been one of the hardest weeks because I am hooked to an African American. And even if I wasn't hooked to him, I could still feel the pain and the hurt just because we're human. It doesn't even have, it's not even a, let's remove the color about it all. It is the fact alone that we are human beings. Why are we treating each other this way? You know? And so, right, still, because it's been going on for so long. And growing up, personally, when people would, you know, tell me stories of things that would happen with, like, you know, the racial things going on, I don't know if I was just oblivious or just didn't want to see it, but I honestly, personally, never really witnessed too much of it. I mean, I was a goofball in school, so I would joke around with the African-American kids, and we would call each other names. He would call me a Spanish name. I would call him a African-American. And you're just fooling around, but I never witnessed it for myself. And so I have a mixed cousin who's Black and Puerto Rican, and she told me a story not that long ago, maybe a year or two ago, and when she told me, my face hit the floor. When she was working, this, you know, Caucasian guy said something to her, and I was just like, no, he could not have it. She was like, I'm telling you, yes, and I just couldn't believe it. So to me, it's shocking, but we can't allow ourselves to get wrapped up, because if we dive into God's word and we stay focused on what and who he says that we are, we need to, like, not lose focus on what he says, because if not, we'll lose ourselves. We really will.
Absolutely. In the community, how do you all deal with the names or the so-called names? I can't even imagine being married to a Black man. I can't imagine being married to a Black man and somebody calling you the N-word and say you're a lover and don't know what your racial background is.
Yeah.
And
So
how do you keep that emotion from rising up within you, woman of God?
So unfortunately, a lot of times that name calling and the way they do that, I look at it as a very cowardly act. It just recently happened to my husband. He was on the golf course, and the specific golf course that he was at, there was a street that you could drive by and you can see the golf course. And he was on there with a couple of his brothers, and sure enough, the persons that drove by in a truck yelled at my husband and the brothers, saying the N-word, and they don't golf. And
well, I think Tiger Woods would beg to differ.
Facts.
That's the facts.
And what's crazy about it is they laughed it off. And the reason why they laughed it off is because it was so cowardly that you would do that as a drive-by. You wouldn't do that, right, if he was stopping you, right, and there was 3 or 4 of them, and it's just the 2 of you. You wouldn't say that, you know, that wouldn't, you know, and unfortunately some people may, but majority of the time they wouldn't, you know, so they laughed it off because we can't give every ounce of our energy.
Can't fight every battle.
No. And
Can't.
the way we fight them is what Josie was saying, is how we stay and reminding ourselves of who we are in Christ. You know, we are who we are and how we're born here. And he sees us, he tells us, and repeatedly reminds us of who we are in him. And that's what we have to cling on to, not what the world tries to see us as or label us as well.
Absolutely.
About 10 plus years, I was driving with my ex-sister-in-law, and we were just driving, and there was a Caucasian woman, and mind you, my ex-sister-in-law is half Black, and the woman who was walking screamed into our window and said, "What you looking at, you N-word?" And she was very young, and she bawled her eyes out, and I, like I said, never experienced it. That was probably one of the times I experienced it. But she bawled her eyes out because she was very, very young. But me, this was like BC.
Before Christ.
I reversed my car and got on the sidewalk and trapped her so that she doesn't go anywhere. And we were arguing back and forth with her. And I was like, how dare you say that to her? She's a little girl. How can you? And I just was yelling at her and screaming at her. And we went back and forth for a really long time. And long story short, I ended up taking the matter to court. And we were pressing charges on this woman for doing this. But when we got to court, it was like a bunch of us, and then she was there with like just like her 2 members of her family, and she had written a letter in an envelope and gave it to us. And when we read the letter while sitting in court before, you know, the judge called us up, she apologized in that letter, like a long letter, just apologizing to her that she didn't mean to do it, all this stuff. And I was just like, wow. I didn't do it to really think it was going to escalate and she was going to whatever. It was the fact of like just allowing her to know you can't just be walking around the streets calling people these things, that it's not right. You're going to catch the wrong person at the wrong time, you know? And it was a warning to her, pretty much a wake-up call. Like, this is probably the first and only time you should have done this, if that was her first time. But I went ahead and I, you know, took the matter to court because it's not okay.
Well, thank goodness you took it to court.
Yeah.
Think about how different it could have played out.
Absolutely.
So there's the black woman in me says this could have played out so different.
Yes.
Again, the police coming to the door, the stop.
Yep.
Your husband. It could just play out so different, and we all have a story that says, yeah, I was treated real different just because of that.
Yeah.
And somebody called me a name. But that's not who I am.
Amen.
So whenever we're called those names, it does affect little kids because they don't get it.
Right.
I don't think they can get it right away.
Mm-hmm.
But if we teach our children, who does God say you are?
Mm-hmm.
Who does God say you are? And drill that in.
Yes, absolutely.
Drill it in, because that's the only way they're going to understand that, look, it doesn't matter what you call me. Look, just because I stand in the garage doesn't make me a car.
Right. Right.
So I can stand there and I can make all the noises I want, but I'm not a car.
That's right.
So just because you call me that, and I always say what you eat don't make me fat. So you can call me a name, but this is 56 right now.
Yes.
5th grade, standing in front of the class, made to stand in front of the class because I wrote on the desk, but the little white girl wrote on the desk too.
Mm-hmm.
But I was punished.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
And didn't tell my parents because I was wrong for writing on the desk. Told my mother years later. She said, "Why didn't you tell me?" I said, "Because I knew I was wrong. I was wrong, but she was wrong too."
Right.
She didn't get the punishment that I got.
Wow.
And I got the punishment. And if I ever see that teacher again, vengeance is mine, saith the Lord.
I know, that's right.